Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan. I'm here for 3 hours every week talking about the history and tradition of the outdoors here in the great state of Michigan. We talk about hunting, fishing, shooting, trapping, wildlife issues, conservation issues, even some wild game cooking. We wrap up each week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I'm glad to have you along with us. I do appreciate it. There are a lot of different things you could be doing right now. A lot of different media sources you could be consuming, a lot of things you could be watching, a lot of things you could be listening to, but you hear my voice. And I do appreciate that so very, very much. So what's been going on since we last talked? Well, Mother Nature continues to be kind of fickle this winter across at least much of the state, the southern part of the state, doesn't she? Warm temperatures continue. Bad ice across most of the lower peninsula. No ice in many areas. Not much snow, although it depends on what forecast you listen to. As we're recording the show right now, in my neck of the woods, my part of the state, we could be getting some snow by the time you hear this radio show, but maybe not. But isn't that interesting? Isn't that part of the appeal of this outdoor lifestyle we love so much? Isn't this part of the appeal of interacting with Mother Nature? I always think that's one of the more fascinating aspects of what we do and what we love so much. Because when you're outdoors, hunting, fishing, trapping, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature. You're at the mercy of something bigger than you. And I love that. In today's technologically advanced world, where we get, and I'm a geek, I'm a tech geek, I love this stuff as much as anybody, but in this world that we operate in every day, this technological world, we have phones, we have iPads, we have computers, we have the internet, and we are so used to getting an immediate response and immediate gratification about our activities and our actions. If you touch a key on your keyboard, or if you touch the screen on your phone, boom, it jumps to life, and it does exactly what you want it to do. Not so when we get outdoors. We've got the weather to be concerned about. We've got the weather to worry about. We've got the weather to I was going to say fight. You can't fight the weather. You can't fight Mother Nature. You can just make the most of it. Is there ice? Is there not ice? Is there snow? What about the wind direction? We've got to deal with all these things. It takes the control away from us. And I love that. I love that challenge, and I love that it gives us a different perspective on the world that we live in. That's why I encourage people to get outdoors. And even if you don't want to be hardcore about it, if you don't want to go hunting or fishing or shooting or trapping, that's okay, that's fine. But just get outdoors. Take a walk. Go skiing, go snowmobiling, go cross-country skiing, go bird watching. Get some fresh air. Get some cold air. Maybe be a little bit uncomfortable. It's okay to be physically uncomfortable. It's okay to get out there and maybe get a little rain on the back of your neck. Maybe get some snow going down the back of your coat. Ooh, that gave me a chill just thinking about it, but that's good. It lets you know, I don't want to use another cliche, but it lets you know that you're alive. I like that. I haven't had a chance to get out and do much lately. Between family obligations and people being a little under the weather at our house, but that's changing. Things are getting better. if you do want to get involved in the outdoors, and if you can't get on the ice, maybe go down to the Ultimate Fishing Show in Novi this weekend. I had hoped to make it down there. That's not going to work out, but things come along. I do plan to get out to the lease property that we have. I got to get out there and take down my blinds. I've got a couple of Wraith 270 see-through ground blinds out there. I need to take those down. I've got a couple of chairs out there in those blinds. I do have one heater that I stuck in a big box blind, and we want to take down the trail cameras as well. I do find myself already thinking about turkey season. Now, I know turkey season is a ways off yet, but that's the next thing on my agenda, and I'm getting kind of excited about that. Bear hunting, turkey hunting, walleye fishing. Those are my passions. The deer hunting for me is just something to stay involved in the fall, to get out there and to stay a part of this hunting tradition. I will be turkey hunting this spring. One of my goals is to shoot a Michigan bird this spring. I played cat and mouse with them all season last year. Wasn't successful. This year I'm going to make that happen. I will not have a Michigan bear tag this year. So what I'm going to do is go back to White River, Ontario, Canada. I want to shoot a bear up there with Ron St. Louis of Northern Wilderness Bear Outfitters. Usually I go up there in August. Not this year, since my daughter's getting married at the end of August, actually early September. I don't think they want me to be gone for a week then. So I'm moving my bear hunt up to June, the spring hunt with Ron St. Louis. I will get back just in time to be a part of the Walleye for Warriors event. I probably won't be able to fish in it this year, but I'll be able to be there and support our troops and maybe help host and MC the event. This is a big, busy season coming up for me right now. It normally is this time of year. Friday the 20th, I'll be at Riverwalk Community Church in Bay City. Saturday the 28th, Calvary Baptist Church in Midland. Tuesday, February 21st, at the Field and Stream Club, a fundraiser for the Fordney athletic program, youth athletics. Friday, March 3rd, First Baptist Church in Clare. Saturday, March 4th, the big Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner. This is the church that I'm a part of. Tickets will go on sale for this event. We're thinking Monday, January 30th. We've moved the venue this year over to the Great Hall in Midland, so we have more room. We have more room for vendors. We have more room for tables. We have more room for you. You, as an Outdoor Magazine listener, may get a little bit of a jump on those ticket sales. Every year we sell out in like 3-4 days, always less than a week. So you might have a jump on it. Just keep listening. I'll give you some details. And then Wednesday, March 22nd, we're going to do a Wednesday night live at the Lumberjack Restaurant, the Forward Corporation Lumberjack Restaurant in West Branch. So we got a lot of events coming up. I'm looking forward to those. These dinners are a great option if you want to go fishing with me. Now, I am a licensed charter captain, but I don't run paid charters. I run trips out on Saginaw Bay on the Angler Quest for walleye. But I don't do paid charters because I don't want to go into competition with my friends who are charter captains. It wouldn't be right for me to use them as a resource and to have them on the radio show and the various podcasts. And I call them when I need fishing advice. It wouldn't be right in my mind for me to go into competition with those guys and have somebody book a trip with me just because they heard me on the radio or whatever. So what I do is I do trips for charity groups, charity events. And at many of these events we were talking about, you can bid on a trip walleye fishing with me on Saginaw Bay, including that event Tuesday, February 21st at the Field and Stream Club for the Fordney Club, and of course Saturday, March 4th at the Trinity Monitor event. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I encourage you to use that email as the best way to get in touch with me. And a lot of you do that. I get questions, comments, suggestions. The Ask Avery questions, the best way to get those to me are to send me an email to Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Coming up after the break here on this week's Outdoor Magazine show, we're going to talk more about the consent decree situation. This these are the negotiations that have unfortunately pitted tribal commercial fishermen against the sport fishermen of Michigan. Nobody is saying the tribal anglers don't certainly have a right to be out there, because they do. Undeniable, undisputable. But should their interest be put ahead of the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of sport fishermen in Michigan? Jim Johnson is a retired DNR Fisheries biologist who will join me to talk more about that and how much he says this agreement will cost you as a Michigan taxpayer. Then Dave Thomas of Bowhunter Planet joins me from the ATA, the Archery Trade Association show, his thoughts on that. Also, they've started a new initiative. I think it's called The Time Is Now. And the time is now, in Dave's mind, to get people involved in the sport of archery. In hour number 2, we're talking top-tier predators in Michigan. That would be bears, mountain lions, and wolves with Cody Norton of the DNR. Nick Green of MUCC checks in. And in our third hour, Mike Thorman of the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation and wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. A busy show coming up. I think some very interesting topics, some conversations I am looking forward to having. And I hope you can stick around for the next, well, I'm going to be here for 3 hours. Stick around for as much as you can. I would certainly appreciate it. My name is Mike Avery. The show is called Outdoor Magazine. The website is mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. The website is mikeaveryoutdoors.com. The email address is mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. More coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in, let's go to Port Huron, WPHM 1380 AM. And north of the bridge, way north of the bridge, in Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan tracker and angler quest headquarters. Right now, as I'm in the studio right now, the launch is open at Linwood Beach. Saginaw Bay is open. Folks are out there catching limits of beautiful, beautiful Saginaw Bay walleye. And that's not always the case this time of year. Ice fishermen are very frustrated, but the trollers are very happy right now. Linwood Beach, great facilities, great people. And Angler Quest headquarters. I think they're the biggest Angler Quest dealer in the country. Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. I was talking a little bit in the opening segment about the consent decree agreement and how it has pitted tribal commercial fishermen against sport fishermen in the state of Michigan. That's unfortunate. That really is unfortunate. Jim Johnson has a very interesting perspective on this. He's a retired DNR Fisheries biologist who has been very much involved in this situation. He joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Jim, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, it has been a while since you and I talked on the air. As a reminder to people, tell us about your background. Where do you come from this issue on, Jim?
Okay. I worked for the DNR Alpena Fisheries Research Station, where I led the research effort there for 25 years. And one of the principal jobs I had was working with the other agencies on Lake Huron to try to bring about the restoration of lake trout. I worked on other things, too. I had a role in monitoring the commercial fishery. I spent a lot of time on board commercial fishing vessels. And, of course, I worked with the forage base and the Chinook salmon problems as we watched our forage base dwindle. I had a lot of work that I had to do with invasive species, and we can talk about that later, and how these invasive species basically brought down the fishery as we knew it. But I think the highlight of my career was when I got to present evidence that we had actually succeeded with lake trout rehabilitation in Lake Huron when I went to West Yellowstone and presented that finding at a wild trout symposium there in 2017. That was a pretty exciting moment in my life, because for like 50 years, it seemed, we'd been going in circles and not getting anywhere with lake trout. But because of the 2000 consent decree, which had converted millions of feet of gillnet into the less lethal trap net kind of fishing, and because of better treatment of the St. Mary's River with a $5 million investment in heightened sea lamprey control there, we saw this reproduction. And by the time I gave that presentation in West Yellowstone, half of the lake trout in Lake Huron were wild, and most of the lake trout in Lake Huron were coming from northern Lake Huron, where we'd had almost no lake trout back in 2000. All of a sudden, northern Lake Huron and the refuge at Drummond Island were pumping out wild lake trout like crazy and feeding the entire lake's fishery with wild lake trout. So when I saw in this consent decree that they had opened the Drummond Island Refuge to gillnet fishing 10 months out of the year, that was a real kick in the gut. And when you look at what's going on in Lake Michigan, even in the last 20 years, the lake trout harvest around the northern Lake Michigan Refuge has been just too high. And mortality rates were so high that we had a refuge with almost no spawners in it. What's the point of having a spawning refuge for lake trout if you don't have a spawning aged population? And that's where we were in Lake Michigan, and all this proposal does is increase the gillnet kill of lake trout in the vicinity of that refuge. But, you know, this isn't about fishing rights. The fishing rights were adjudicated back in the 1970s and 80s. And we've, for a long time, been working under the assumption that the tribes in the state would kind of split the resource around 50-50, and that the sustainability of the resource comes first. If you have a sustainable and renewable resource, all boats will float. Everybody's going to have a fishery for future generations. And the perplexing and discouraging thing for me and the Coalition to Protect Michigan Resources, which I'm representing today, it was the finding that Michigan seems to have abandoned the gillnet conversion effort of 2000. $14 million were spent to buy out gillnet effort, and that's been thrown away. And instead, what we're seeing in this proposed consent decree would be a incentivizing of more gillnet effort. Instead of taking gillnet effort down, let's put it all back. So why would the state and the other parties be talking about this? And I think that's where you have to get back to this invasive species problem. We've all recognized, I think, that the Great Lakes are fundamentally different than zebra and quagga mussels have hit them. But I don't think any lake's been hit harder than Lake Huron, where we lost our alewives, which caused the Chinook salmon collapse. Chinook salmon are dependent on alewives. Dreisena mussels, these zebra mussels and quagga mussels, have just scarfed up the food supply and left alewives with very little to eat. That lowered our forage base and caused the salmon population to decline, and our anglers are now dependent on lake trout, just like they are in Lake Superior. The anglers there are dependent on lake trout. What appears to have happened in these negotiations, I can't talk about the negotiations, but what we can see is the result here, that they've proposed a vast expansion of gill netting so they can now target lake trout. All the past negotiations have been, how can we reduce the harvest of lake trout so that lake trout can finally reproduce? In this new decree, it's how can we harvest more? And the only explanation, and it's pretty clear from what the DNR has been saying, is that they're trying to find opportunities for 90 commercial fishermen with the 5 tribes to continue to harvest lots of fish.
So you've got 90...
Yeah, there's about 90. The average is just over 90 commercial fishermen fishing the last 10 years. And, we've all had to tighten our belts. Remember that in Traverse Bay in 2019, we were down to a 1 lake trout limit in recognition of the finite number of lake trout that were there and the need to get them to reproduce. In northern Lake Huron, we were down to a 2 fish bag limit in order to maintain our lake trout population to where we could get reproduction. Now those lake trout that we saved are being given over to the tribes. What this represents is a lack of they did not recognize at the very foundation of negotiations, it should have been the core of negotiations, that the resource has dwindled. The whitefish have collapsed because of the zebra and quagga mussels. Whitefish, when we were monitoring whitefish reproduction here in Thunder Bay since 1985, and we saw the reproduction rates dropping and dropping from the late 1990s through 2015 to the point where they were almost gone. Baby whitefish were almost gone from Thunder Bay.
If this consent
decree, shortly after, we saw the harvest of adult whitefish collapse.
Jim, just to keep this conversation, and listen, you and I could spend 3 hours on this, but I don't have 3 hours. So just to keep this moving here, if this consent decree stands as is, from a biological perspective, what will be the impact of lake trout in the Great Lakes?
Well, it's almost certain that those lakes that were teetering on the edge of collapse, like Lake Superiors and Lake Hurons, where in Lake Huron we barely have enough reproduction to sustain the population. And in Lake Michigan, reproduction rates are very, very low. That reproduction will stop, and we'll be back to a put-and-take fishery for lake trout. And what's most concerning to us from the standpoint of this 50-50 allocation, in Lake Superior and Huron, where we're totally dependent on lake trout catch rates could drop to the point where recreational fishing just won't be attractive anymore. How can you realize the state's 50% allocation of the resource if there's no recreational fishery left? And these gill nets are also targeting walleyes and ciscos and yellow perch. In Lake Michigan, we see a future with seasonal good fishing for salmon. The silverfish will be there because you hear the state talking about how gill nets are selective. Well, they're only selective to the extent that they're not very good at catching salmon, but they're very good at collecting just about every bottom-oriented fish. So walleyes, perch, and lake trout are going to be the targets, and we're going to see a single species kind of fishery in Lake Michigan. That's the outlook we see, and we see that the millions and millions of dollars spent in lake trout rehabilitation are basically going to be sacrificed for short-term gain. The concern we have, too, is that the commercial fishery itself can't be sustained on lake trout alone, not with this amount of effort. If they don't take an approach that provides for a self-sustaining lake trout fishery, in only a matter of a year or two, the lake trout will be gone too. And then where is our commercial fishery?
Wow.
So I think, with the 2000 consent decree, it floated all boats. With the proposed 2020 consent decree, all boats may very well sink.
We're talking with Jim Johnson, a retired DNR fisheries biologist. He spent his career on northern Lake Huron. Jim, I got to take a break. When we come back, a couple of quick questions for you, and I'll get you thinking about them now. I'm not looking for an answer, but number one, how does this affect non-anglers, that is the taxpayers of Michigan, and also why, and I realize, you can't speak for the DNR, but you spent your career there. Why would the DNR, a group that I would think is supposed to be looking out for the best interests of sport anglers, why would they turn their back on sport anglers and apparently want to decimate the fishery and support the tribes? I don't know. We're talking with Jim Johnson, retired DNR fisheries biologist, about a very complicated issue that honestly we could spend the entire 3 hours dealing with, but we can't. We've talked about it a lot. Jim has some interesting perspectives. We'll talk about that and more. Then we'll wrap up the hour talking with Dave Thomas of Bowhunter Planet about his thoughts on the upcoming ATA show, the Archery Trade Association show, and a new initiative called The Time Is Now. The time is now to get people involved in the sport of archery. Well, guess what? All these people involved in the sport of recreational fishing have a big sword hanging over their heads right now, in my opinion. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM and north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knives. I have a Rapid River knife in my pocket right now, as I always do. Check them out online at rapidriverknifeworks.us. That's rapidriverknifeworks.us. Talking now with Jim Johnson, a retired DNR Fisheries biologist, about the 2020 consent decree. Jim, obviously sport fishermen are concerned about this, but it goes beyond this. It goes to the taxpayers of the state of Michigan as well.
That's correct. And if you think about Great Lakes fisheries as a public trust, they're defined as basically a public trust responsibility of the state to protect for this and future generations. The role of the DNR is to protect those fish populations for all of us, not just the hunters and the fishermen. And I think the best example of this is how the state back in the 1960s and 70s spent tens of millions of dollars to restore predator-prey balance and clean up our beaches. When we had so many dead alewives on the beaches of Lake Michigan, you couldn't even use the beaches back in the 1960s. That represented a fish population or a fish community in collapse. We didn't have predators to control those alewife numbers. The system was out of balance, and the state moved to restore that balance, and it benefited everyone who swims, who fishes, who just enjoys beachcombing. Everybody benefited by having a healthy, balanced fishery after the salmon and lake trout were reintroduced. The same is true today. If we fail to protect that balance in our fishery, there will be just unforeseeable consequences. There's no way of knowing how the dominoes will fall if you take out our keystone predators. The lake trout and the salmon are like the wolves are to Yellowstone Park. These are predators that groom the entire ecosystem and make sure it stays healthy. If you take out a keystone predator, it very well could lead to chaos in the system. It's hard for anyone to predict what the outcome will be. I just hope we don't have to see what happens if we lose our predators in these systems.
And you were giving me some numbers the other day, though, what it's costing to keep each tribal angler in business.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. The state of Michigan contributed $4.3 million just for the treatment of the St. Mary's River when it was determined to be such a problem. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission spends $20 million a year in sea lamprey control around the Great Lakes, and the most expensive part of that program is the St. Mary's River and the Manistee River. Those are incredibly expensive treatments. So I'm not sure what the number exactly is, but I would guess that close to half that $20 million a year spent on lamprey control is spent in 1836 treaty waters. And then there's stocking, certainly millions of dollars per year in stocking when you consider all the lake trout and salmon and steelhead and so on that are stocked in the system. And we have over 200,000 angler days of fishing in the 1836 treaty waters year in and year out. Whereas the tribal fishery is important. It's kind of like comparing a tractor trailer truck system with a Mazda sports car, the tractor trailer being a commercial fisherman and the Mazda sport car being a recreational fisherman. But no one's saying that just because they're big, all the highways should be just devoted to trucks. And that's what we're saying here with this consent decree, that all the resources that have been spent to make these Great Lakes healthy should be devoted to 90 fishermen.
Why would the Jim, why would the DNR do this? Any thoughts on this?
I think it's because they've lost. And let's not say the DNR. The DNR is not being represented by and large in these negotiations. As far as we can tell, there's only been one or two DNR people allowed in the room.
So it's the state of Michigan?
We're talking the Attorney General's office and the tribal unit with the Fisheries Division, the tribal unit leader, and that's who's doing this, who's making these decisions. And I can't explain exactly why they would do this, but I think the stock assessment biologists of the lakes would probably advise strongly against what's going on, but they're not part of the process.
Well, and isn't that part of the problem? Is the process has been so quiet, all this, that we as the general public didn't get a sense for what it was going to be until maybe now it's too late.
Right, and this goes against every principle that we fish biologists have worked under. We have always been adherents of transparency in our decision making. As you're probably aware, every spring we'd hold spring fishery workshops on Lake Michigan and Huron and Superior, reaching out to anglers, getting their opinions, letting them know what we're thinking before we even start to make decisions, and trying to get angler input through citizen advisory committees. This was done entirely in secret. 3 years of secret negotiations, and all of a sudden we have 100 and some page document and only 30 days to comment.
Jim, I got to let you go. Again, we could talk about this forever. I certainly appreciate your insight. You have more insight into this than anybody I've talked to. Jim Johnson, retired fisheries biologist. What can sport fishermen do? Well, you can do some things. You can get out there and fish and buy your license and enjoy the resource. You can join your local fishing club, and you can support CPMR, the Committee to Protect Michigan Resources. They've spent an awful lot of money fighting this thing, and they could use some help. Check them out online and consider making a contribution there. We'll take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, Dave Thomas of Bowhunter Planet talking about the ATA show, the Archery Trade Association show, and a new initiative he is backing. That's here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Carroll on two stations, WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Ludington on News 97.98, 98.7 WLDN, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette on WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Boning Archery, Michigan-based Boning, a leader in the archery industry for more than 3/4 of a century. They continue to come up with new products, new innovative manufacturing processes. Check them out online at boning.com. That's BOHNING.com, boning.com. Boning, as you're hearing this show, is at the Archery Trade Association show in Indianapolis. Dave Thomas of Bowhunter Planet is at that show as well. I think of Dave and Bowhunter Planet as one of the definitive sources for archery today. That's how strongly that's how much I respect these guys. Dave is with us on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Dave, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Hey, you're driving down to Indy right now to the ATA show. Is that show still? I mean, obviously you have to be there, but does the show have the relevance that it used to?
You don't know yet. This is going to determine the show. I'm very excited to see. Obviously, from the past couple of years, it's really had a downward spiral. But this year, Bowtech and the Pure Archery Group brands have come back, and a lot of other brands like Arctis. So some of the bigger ones will be there, Paradigm. So those companies all include multiple companies. For example, Paradigm has Rage, Block, Lenda, and Muzzy. So there's a lot of brands that come with them when they come. So I'll be interested to see, like, how much, what's happening there, I guess, this year. So I'm really excited to get there.
And all these new products that are being unveiled will then be available for archers and bow hunters for the spring.
Correct, yeah. There'll be a ton of new stuff there, a lot of little stuff, which is really exciting. The little stuff's where people get to see things that will help them in the field, which is really exciting. Things like the Painted Arrow Pro Mag that holds your phone like on your stabilizer, or on now a crossbow. They just launched a crossbow version. So when you have an iPhone that has a magnet in it, it'll suck it right to the bracket, which will hold it for you, which makes it awesome. So those are like the little things, though, that I think that's a Michigan-based company too, which is actually pretty exciting. But those are the little things that I think will excite people the most. I mean, yeah, bows are bows, and that stuff's cool. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of that's already launched, right? So yeah. I think we'll see a few things here, but not a ton when it comes to actual bows.
What is the state of archery, the state of bow hunting today?
I personally think it's just, we're at I think we peaked during the COVID pandemic, And I think now we're starting to a little bit chip away, starting a little bit of a slow slide, I guess. So hoping we can kind of rekindle that and try to get more and more archers out there. It's really important, especially with the youth.
Well, and you guys, Dave Thomas and Bowhunter Planet, you've started an initiative. You've backed this initiative to do that. Tell me more about that, Dave.
Yeah, the thought was with our initiative was just that, to be honest, Mike, it was kind of one of those things that came to my mind in the middle of the night when I was like half asleep. And I thought, it's really important that we need to find a way to get to people, and we need to find a way now. We can't keep waiting. And when I say the time is now initiative, it doesn't necessarily just mean it means for the archery world to step up and start doing things to help get more archers into the industry, more people trying that heritage that we all share. And I think that the message we did with that video was very clear and tries to get to people that don't do it today to say, look, you're a part of this. Nature's a part of this. All the, original bows came from wood, those trees, it's just a wonderful thing. And so to get people to at least test it and try even traditional archery or compound archery or crossbow archery would be really helpful and, help continue to grow it in the long term.
I actually haven't seen that video yet, Dave. Where do I find it?
You can find it right on our YouTube page. It comes with I think it came out with the link from Archery Wire as well. You get to open the full thing up, but yeah, it's in there. It's a wonderful video. It's really touching, and we had it done right and done to where it was going to really do most impact.
Also on the website, bowhunterplanet.com?
Yep, and people can find it there as well. Yep, should be right on the front page there somewhere.
So what are you most excited about seeing at the show? What are you really looking forward to seeing?
If I have to be honest, it's more just talking to people in person. It's been a while since I've seen a lot of the guys from a lot of different teams. So it's going to be nice just to sit down and say hi and see how they're doing. But as far as bows go, I think there's a couple bows launching. One of the more exciting ones I've seen with Barnett launching a crossbow called the Hyper Raptor. And it looks really, really cool. It's got more of that Raven type look. So very excited to see this thing in person.
That was Barnett, you say?
Yeah, yep.
Because Barnett has been thought of, at least in my mind, as kind of a entry-level type bow. So apparently they're stepping it up a little bit.
That's a great point, yeah. And this one doesn't look that way. I haven't seen it personally. I'm looking at it in the magazine here on my way to the show. So to me, this looks like a Raven type style or a 10-point, more of a high-cost bow, what it looks to me.
Dave Thomas, listen, I appreciate your time. Have fun at the show. And thanks for pushing. Not pushing. Thanks for reminding people about the outdoors, the outdoor lifestyle, the role that archery plays. You guys are the best. Bowhunterplanet.com. Dave, again, we'll talk. We'll talk again after the show.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Dave Thomas of Bowhunter Planet, bowhunterplanet.com. I like what Dave's saying there about, listen, this is what I talk about all the time. This is what I talked about at the top of the hour. Get outside. Get outdoors. Whether it's hunting or fishing or shooting or trapping or just getting outside. Interact with Mother Nature. Get away from the technology. I'm a tech geek. I am. But if you get away from it, refresh your brain, refresh your mind, refresh your soul, refresh your body. Hour 2 of Outdoor Magazine coming up after the break.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. Right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And I do think the best way to listen to the show, if you can, is on your local AM or FM station. There you get your local news and weather and sports, even your local commercials. Maybe there's a big sale you want to take advantage of. But isn't it nice to know that if you can't listen to the show, if your local affiliate doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, that there's a podcast. Now, the broadcast stations get the content of the show before the podcast is uploaded. So that's another reason to listen to your local radio station. But if you can't, you can hear the podcast version of the show on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It's also on my Facebook page and anywhere else you get podcasts, including Amazon Music, Audible, LinkedIn, Apple Music, Google Play, Odyssey, Deezer, even YouTube. Anywhere you can hear a podcast, just about anywhere you can hear a podcast, you can hear the podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show. Well, speaking of podcasting is so hot, it's so big, it's so popular these days, and I understand that because anybody can do a podcast. It doesn't cost anything, and if you have a good story to tell, well, it costs very little. If you have a good story to tell, you can build an audience. I also do podcasts that are not radio shows, including a podcast for offshore tackle, Primal Outdoors, Polar Craft Boats, and Angler Quest Pontoons. In fact, when we're done here in the studio, we're going to record this month's Angler Quest podcast with Captain John Littlefield, so you'll want to keep an ear out for that. Regardless, though, of how you are hearing my voice, when you are hearing my voice, whatever radio station, radio show, or podcast you are listening to, I do certainly appreciate it. I've been doing this for a long time now. I continue to plan to do it for quite a while, too. You know, God's plans are not my plans, but that's my plan to continue on. And I wouldn't be able to do it without your support, without you listening to the show, without your input, without your suggestions, without your comments. The best way to get those to me is to send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. I can tell you that one of the most common topics I hear from people about, not just in the UP, primarily, of course, but across this entire state, is the topic, the concept of top-tier predators. And in Michigan, that is bears, mountain lions, and wolves. Cody Norton is a DNR wildlife biologist who deals with those critters. How cool would that be, to have your job dealing with top-tier predators? And maybe how frustrating that might be as well. Cody's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line to talk more about this. Cody, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Listen, in your job, tell me, you know, I told people basically what you do, but what does that involve? Do you actually get involved in trapping and collaring? Do you get your hands on these critters once in a while?
That's a good question. I certainly used to get to do that more as a field biologist. Still get to go out a little bit and doing bear den checks and helping out with wolf trapping. But it's a lot more, you know, coordinating other folks that get to do the fun stuff now.
That's the problem with moving up the food chain, Cody.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about bears real quick before we move into some other things. Our bear harvest, I understand, was up this year. Does that mean anything as far as hunters and the number of tags in the future?
Yeah, so we have been seeing, for several years now, some increases in hunter success rate. And so one of the issues there is if we try to maintain the same harvest levels for bear populations or even slightly increase it, if hunter success keeps going up, that might mean the same number of tags or fewer number of tags, even if we want to kill the same or slightly more bears. So that's been kind of an issue in some of the units that we've been struggling with, you know, trying to make sure we aren't over-harvesting the population, but also providing opportunity for hunters. So I guess we'll see if that trend continues or if we can change that.
I feel like the bear population in Michigan is certainly healthy, but also expanding, at least geographically. Where I live in the central part of the Lower Peninsula, we've got bears wandering around, I don't want to say all over the place now, but it's common to see bears in mid-Michigan these days. That never used to be the case, Cody.
Absolutely. And we decreased harvest levels across the state pretty significantly back in 2012 due to concern about the bear population. And especially in the northern lower, we have seen it kind of explode since that time. I think our estimates are up almost 70%. and they not only are there more bears where, there have always been bears, but there's bears expanding and moving southward and going into areas where we typically haven't had them.
What about mountain lions, cougars, pumas, whatever you want to call them? We have them in Michigan now. We have them in the Upper Peninsula. Do you have a feel for how many cats are roaming around?
Sure. So, we still haven't been able to document any evidence of breeding or a female being here. So all of the evidence we have points to males that are dispersing from those western populations and don't find a female and end up in the UP or, over in Wisconsin, Minnesota. We talked to those states as well. This year we've had 11 confirmed sightings. I should say that's 2022. I'm still not used to being in a new year.
Yep.
But we had 11 confirmed sightings. We're still working on a couple other ones that have come in. Best we can tell, it looks like there's at least 2 individuals that have been hanging around the last few years in the UP. We've been able to get some trail camera photos confirmed that were, a day apart and over 100 miles apart. So that helps us, try to distinguish between 2 different individuals like that. But certainly most of those confirmed sightings are going to be, one individual getting caught on several trail cameras or having its tracks found or anything like that.
The one, when it's sighted a day later, 100 miles apart, that's got to be a second cat though, right?
Exactly. Yep. And so that's where we feel pretty confident that there, have been at least 2 roaming around where we could tell that, that looks like a movement that's not possible by a cougar or mountain lion. But otherwise, we've been having, I think 8 of the confirmed sightings last year were in the East UP in Chippewa and Mackinac County, a couple in the West UP in Ontonagon County, and then one in the Central and Delta. So, but for the most part, they've been pretty, clustered in the East and clustered in the West, which helps us, kind of indicates to us too that it looks like maybe it's 2 individuals that have kind of set up shop here, at least for the time being.
Several years ago, there was a sighting down by Lansing, which absolutely blew me away. I didn't believe it until I saw the pictures. Has that cat been seen again? Any confirmed cases of mountain lions in the Lower Peninsula?
That cat has not been seen again. It was never verified before it showed up at that location, and it hasn't been, verified after that. There are captives in different places in the Lower Peninsula. There are, there could be other situations that might pop up. But certainly that photograph that was taken, we did go out, we confirmed the location, and the animal in the photo was a cougar. But we don't know how that animal got there or where it went. But otherwise, no, we've confirmed 89 sightings since 2008 when the cougar team was developed, and we kind of established a protocol of how to investigate these, how to confirm them. And every single one except for that one has been in the Upper Peninsula.
Okay. All right, let's move on to wolves. Is that do you get sick of talking about wolves, Cody?
Like you described, they can be it can be tough. I mean, the animal itself is super cool to work with, and you get a lot of different perspectives and stakeholder viewpoints on wolves, and a lot of it's polarized, a lot of it's difficult to to bring all those people together and try to move forward with things, but
What is it about the wolf that gets people so passionate on both sides of the issue? Why wolves?
I think it's I think that's a good question too, Mike. I mean, why not bears? Why not cougars? I think they've just been viewed differently in the past, obviously with domestication of dogs from wolves and them looking, similar. I think that evokes some emotions for folks. Certainly for, houndsmen having conflicts with wolves, that can certainly elevate things as well. They're viewed differently. There can certainly be negative impacts to farmers and, maybe perceived impacts or real impacts for deer hunters, depending on where they're at. So So I think there's just a lot of people are, interested and want to be at the table when it comes to wolves.
We're talking with Cody Norton, who's a wildlife biologist for the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. We've got to take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, I want to talk with Cody about the impact of wolves on UP whitetails. What about this story about this one wolf that was captured in Michigan, collared in Michigan, and ended up all over the place? Is that really true? And what about coy wolves? And should we buy into this, or is this just a ploy to maybe take away coyote hunting in the future? That's all coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra, 1330 WTRX. And north of the bridge, in the Sioux, on News Talk 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Michigan-based Whack-'em and Plack-'em, a very cool and unique way to show off your trophies. Use them for shoulder mounts, European mounts, even fish. For details, check out the website nontypicalinnovations.com. That's nontypicalinnovations.com. We appreciate Jason coming on board and working with us here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Show. Again, nontypicalinnovations.com. We're talking right now with the DNR wildlife biologist Cody Norton about wolves. Cody, are there wolves in the northern lower?
So we've been able to confirm 2 instances where we've had wolves in the northern lower since, they're extirpated back in 1910. But it's been quite a while since we've had one of those. So the first one was in 2004. Coyote trapper actually caught and ended up shooting a collared wolf in Presque County. And so that was actually a female that had been collared up in the UP in Mackinac County the year before. And, apparently crossed the ice bridge. And I can't remember if the collar had failed or if it just had gotten so far away that the plane couldn't pick it up, because we were using VHF collars at the time, some older technology. But obviously that wolf didn't, continue to be in the northern lower. Then 10 years later, in 2014, some biologists with the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians caught trail camera photos, tracks, and scat from what appeared to be a wolf in Emmett County. And then they submitted that scat sample, and that was confirmed genetically to be a wolf as well. And I think something, with the genetics, we were able to confirm as well that it was, appeared to be a Great Lakes wolf, not an escaped captive or anything else that occasionally, show up as well.
Because I hear from people all the time, I saw a wolf. I say, well, what part of the state are you in? And if they tell me the lower peninsula from, the middle of the state down, my answer is it's not a wolf, it's a big coyote. I mean, there were rumors of a breeding wolves over by Alpena a few years ago, maybe several years ago now, but I think that was found out those were coyotes, weren't they?
Yes, so there in 2010, actually, there were 3 coyote pups that were trapped and collared, like you said, Sheboygan County, I think. And at the time, our biologists thought that they were wolf pups because of how large they were, how big their feet were, their ears, different physical characteristics. But took genetic samples, sent them in, and they were coyotes. But some unknown number of generations back in their pedigree, it appeared that a Great Lakes wolf had bred, a female had bred with a male coyote. And so these animals had, maybe 1 to 2% or something wolf genetics from way back in their ancestry. And in this litter, it made them, appear larger and have more wolf-like characteristics.
Well, let's talk about this concept of wolves and coyotes interbreeding to create something called a coy wolf. I'm really concerned about this because I think if we buy into this, it opens up the door to close down coyote hunting because the antis are going to say, well, we can't hunt coyotes if they've got wolf DNA in them. Of course, there's some residual wolf DNA from generations ago. Is there such a thing as a coy wolf? Do coyotes and wolves interbreed?
So that 2010, those 3 coyote pups, that's the only situation like it that we've ever confirmed, ever found evidence of. Possibly, it's still an unknown number of generations, but possibly a more recent hybridization event. And when would you expect that to occur? It would be on the leading edge of recolonization, when potentially a female wolf gets in an area where there are no male wolves and then ends up, potentially allowing the, breeding with a male coyote. In general, no, we've tested genetics on hundreds of wolves in the UP, many coyotes as well. We've worked with local trappers to be able to pull blood samples from captured coyotes as well. And we haven't found evidence of that at all outside of this one, unique situation. Also, the term coyote or coy wolf, really, it's used out of context now quite a bit. So that term gained popularity back in 2014. PBS published a documentary called Meet the Coy Wolf, and they were really talking about eastern coyotes. So they were talking about coyotes. They are coyotes. That is their species. But way back, they had some remnant genetics from ancient hybridizations with eastern wolves, which are basically extirpated now outside of Algonquin Park in Ontario is kind of the one remnant population. So basically, our coyotes throughout much of the eastern U.S. and northeastern U.S., have some ancestry of hybridization with wolves, but they're coyotes. They're managed as coyotes. They're treated as coyotes, and we don't, generally do not see any sort of, new hybridization events occurring.
Thank you, Cody. I appreciate that. What about the story about the one wolf that was allegedly collared in Michigan, wandered all over the place, ended up in Ontario? Any truth to that?
Yeah. So, and every once in a while we see this now that we have GPS collars that can actually communicate directly with satellites. We don't lose them when they take off, outside of an area that we can actually pick up their signal. So we collared that wolf. It was an adult male, about 93 pounds, back in June of 2021 in Gogebic County in the western UP. And it ended up taking off, going through Wisconsin, Minnesota, stepped foot in North Dakota, came back to Minnesota, then into Ontario, and eventually was harvested in Manitoba in early December of 2022. Wow. So wow. Pretty amazing trek. If you trace the route that it took, it was about 2,400 miles. And I think this is a really good example of what we're seeing, when we bring up cougar sightings in the UP. These are the types of treks that some of these animals can make, and they can cover in, huge amounts of miles or ground and show up in areas where you don't expect them to.
I didn't believe that story, so I appreciate you setting me straight on that one. All right, let's talk about wolves and whitetail. Now, you've heard this. I hear this all the time. People say the DNR is underestimating the size of the wolf population in the UP, and those wolves are decimating UP whitetails. Your thoughts on that?
Sure. I think we've been using the same technique for estimating abundance of wolves in the UP since 1989 when they first showed up and recolonized the UP. We're actually actively working on a new research project looking at a couple alternative techniques for surveying the population. So our current method produces a minimum population estimate. It's a more conservative approach, and it was designed that way because we were trying to, be able to demonstrate that wolves have recovered, that they've met federal recovery goals and then state recovery goals, and that we could hang our hat on a number that we know there are at least this many wolves in the UP, and whether or not we've accomplished, the goal of recovery. Now we're, at a point where we could probably transition towards something that might be a little bit more efficient be more of a general estimate rather than a minimum estimate. So I think we're definitely looking forward to having that in the future. But still, I think our minimum estimates that we produce right now, we spend a ton of time in the woods, on the ground, covering roads and trails and everything else to get the most accurate estimate that we can. And then for the impact of wolves on deer, I mean, we've done the Michigan Predator Prey study was a huge and very long study looking at the low, mid, and high snowfall zones of the UP, looking at wolf as well as coyote, bear, bobcat predation on adult does and fawns. And what we really learned from that project is that, yes, wolves are the number one predator of adult deer, especially in the high and mid snowfall zones. Coyotes are the number one predator of fawns. And what we saw, 2012, 13, 14, we had severe winters, back-to-back-to-back winters, and we saw the deer population in the UP decline significantly. And then when we had some mild winters, we saw that population rebound. So absolutely, wolves are out there. They're eating deer. They're killing deer. But what really drives that UP deer population is winter severity.
Any evidence on how many whitetails a wolf will kill during its lifetime?
Yeah, there are estimates. Most of those are done during the winter, which is when wolves are going to be more successful at killing deer, especially when they're in the poorest condition, especially in severe winters. Those estimates can be anywhere from 15 to 40. Just kind of depending on the different survey, what techniques were used, where it was conducted. Some of those have been done in the UP. But it's still, especially with a pack animal, and what we saw on the predator prey study was that wolves are not very successful at killing deer during the summer compared to when they are, can be very successful during severe winters in late winter, early spring, when deer are in very poor condition.
And of course, you guys at the DNR are in favor of a wolf hunt, but your hands are tied by the feds.
So we are in favor of wolf delisting and state management. I think we would have to, that's a whole process that we would have to go through when evaluating public harvest and consulting with tribal governments and as well as stakeholders. But absolutely, supportive of having state management and having wolves in Michigan delisted because we feel that they have met their recovery goals. We've demonstrated that, and they no longer require federal protections.
It's interesting. You'll say delisting, but you won't go as far as a hunt. That's interesting, Cody.
Well, it's just,
I get
certain
it.
processes and we need to have, consultation and engagement before making any sorts of decisions regarding public harvest.
All right, Cody, listen, I appreciate your time. I especially appreciate you bringing to light this whole farce of the coy wolf concept. Too many people are buying into it, and I think it's a wrong road for us to go down. Cody Norton of the Michigan DNR, the website michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, Nick Green of MUCC checks in. I want to see what's on his mind. And then this week's Ask Avery segment, a question about legalities of carrying a weapon to dispatch a deer after the legal season. Man, sometimes the questions, I guess sometimes they're all great questions, but it's like, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC 1450 AM 99.7 FM. And you can hear us in Escanaba on WCHT 600 AM 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Killer Food Plots. You remember Killer Food Plots, big name in the food plot business. Well, guess what? They're back, and they're ready to go, and they are ready to help you with your food plot and hunting property management issues. Check them out online at killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. I want to turn our attention now to MUCC, Michigan United Conservation Club's website, mucc.org. Nick Green is their Chief Information Officer, joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Nick, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It's also great to hear that Killer Food Plots is back at it after a tough year for them. So that's good news.
Yeah, it's really great news. Of course, Nick Percy, the guy behind Killer Food Plots, we lost him about 15 months ago now to COVID, and there was some concern about the future of the company. But one of his friends, Nick's friends, has taken it over, and I'm really excited to be working with him. Nick, awesome. I love working with Michigan-based companies, and I love working with you guys at MUCC as well.
We appreciate that. Much the same. We feel it's important to kind of try to work local where we can, from print jobs to doing habitat at the local level. Anything that we can do to kind of stay in the community is good for us.
So what's going on with you guys this time of year? I think you're going to have a presence at these outdoor shows across the state over the next few weeks, aren't you?
We are. So as this is getting aired, we're going to be at the outdoor shows and kind of right in the middle of the first big one of our season, and that is the Ultimate Fishing Show. That'll be in Novi Thursday through Sunday, so this will get aired, be about halfway through the show. But folks can come on down, check out a lot of good fishing booths. This is put on by Showspan at the Suburban Showplace Collection. There's boats, ice shanties, fishing rods, anything you could want in the angling world will be there. And we're also there selling memberships and talking conservation. So our booth is big and noticeable, so stop by if you see us.
What do people want to talk about when they come to you guys? When they see an MUCC booth, it's like, oh, you guys, yeah, I want to talk to you about what?
If they haven't confused us for the department, the DNR, generally they want to talk to us about some type of policy we worked on. Oftentimes that's how folks know who we are and what we are. And sometimes it's a policy they agreed with, sometimes it's not. So we have a lot of those conversations. And then obviously Michigan Out of Doors is another big brand that folks know. And they recognize us for having owned the TV show and owning the magazine. So quite often that's an introduction too.
Or confusing you with Jimmy Gretzinger.
I do get called Jimmy quite often at the shows. We play a show bingo with our staff, and that's one of the first ones that get checked is when I get called, hey, you're Jimmy, where's Jenny? And I have to remind them that I am not Jimmy, and Jenny is not in our booth either.
Well, and that's kind of fun. But on a serious note, I mean, you guys are involved in a lot of different things. You've got a new state legislature now. What does that mean for MUCC and for us as Michigan outdoorsmen and women?
We have the trifecta, as the media calls it, where one party controls the House, Senate, and administration, so the governor. And this has not happened for about 3 or 4 decades in Michigan. I think it was the late 80s. So it will be interesting. There will undoubtedly be laws that we do not agree with as outdoors folks and gun owners, and we will work hard to keep those laws kind of tamped down or keep those introductions of bills and laws tamped down. But then we'll also work on a lot of environmental good conservation work. So this happens from time to time, and it just kind of ebbs and flows with who's in power. We still do good work. It will just mean the next couple of years will be a lot more of making sure bad bills don't pass, making sure bills that are especially related to firearms are vetted. And, frankly, in terms of our membership, we have a support the Second Amendment as it's written policy. So that's where we will be coming from as these bills pop up.
I saw some news that one of the goals at the state level was going to be, I don't want to use the term increased gun control, but something firearm restriction based. Anything to that at all?
A couple of the ideas we've heard thrown around are, requirements for locking in your home. Well, what does that mean? We haven't even heard any language. Does that mean only if you have kids? Does that mean only, X, Y, Z? We don't know. And again, for MUCC, our policy is quite clear that we support the Second Amendment as written. What we need to be mindful and careful of is that we aren't just thrown out of those rooms because we take such a hard position. Mm-hmm. We need to be able to negotiate on these bills. We need to be able to, if they do have to go down a rabbit hole, are there things we can kill, change, alter? So we've heard of RFIDs. We've heard of gun safe requirements. We've heard of trying to stop private sale. So like you want to sell your long gun to me, that's legal in Michigan as long as I'm over 18. You're over 18, we're legal to own firearms. They want to stop that kind of stuff, which is a huge deal for hunters. I mean, we do a lot of that kind of bartering, trading, selling guns. So yeah, it's very interesting time. It'll be an interesting couple of years. We also have to remember that we had lines redrawn and we redistricted our state. So there are a lot of first-term Democrats elected that maybe won't necessarily vote as hard line with their party as you might think on firearm guns, because they still need to have firearm bills because they still need to get elected. So there's a lot of what ifs. We don't really know. We expect the governor's state of the state to kind of lay out a lot of priorities, and then we expect bills to start rolling in after that, and as we always do.
Got to let you go. Nick Green of MUCC, MUCC.org, MUCC.org. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. And you can hear us, let's see if we can go north of the bridge one more time. Looks like we're going to Traverse City this time, WTCM 580 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins, Michigan-based VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Company owner Paul Perrone has come up with a great concept. Rather than buy several different sets of hunting clothes, why not buy one good quality suit that is warm, well-made, windproof, waterproof, and then snap on and zip on an outer layer to change your camouflage pattern from blaze orange to upland to snow camo. It's a great concept. The website is versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. By the way, they make them in sizes for big people, too. I think 4 or 5X, maybe even 6X. And I just learned, too, during the break here, talking with Paul Perrone of VersaSkins, that they will be at our Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner on Saturday, March 4th. That's at the Great Hall in Midland. Tickets will go on sale for that January 30th. More on that as we get closer to the event. Also, a reminder, too, about our friends from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. And they are the ones responsible for bringing each week's Ask Avery segment to you. Ask Avery is your opportunity to get involved in the content of the show. You can ask a question to me directly, or you can pose a question you would like me to forward on to somebody else. The best way to get those questions to me is to send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's exactly what Ben Rode of Mansalona did. He said, Mike, a friend of mine enjoys the late bow season, and 2 different years he has shot a deer in the evening of January 1st, the last day of the season. Not sure of the shot, he waited until the following morning to track the deer. My question is, in this scenario, is it legal for him to carry a weapon to finish off a wounded animal if the season is now closed? What a great question. Now think about this. You're out there the last day of a season, in this case, archery season. You shoot an animal at last light of the last day of the last minute of the last day of the season. And being a conscientious hunter, as most hunters are, you want to wait and make sure that you can recover the animal rather than push it. So you wait throughout the night. So the next day, the season's no longer open. Can you carry your bow with you to finish off that animal if you find it? I checked. What do you think the answer is? What do you think? I checked with the DNR. The answer is no. It would not be legal. But this is an interesting situation, isn't it? What would you do? If you can't legally then have your bow to shoot that animal, what do? Jump on its back I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know the answer to Ben's question. No, it would not be legal. I have always said that if you spend enough time in the outdoors, hunting or fishing, you are going to eventually unintentionally break a fish or game law. I think it's inevitable. It's not intentional, but it's inevitable. I always equate it to driving. If you spend enough time behind the wheel, you are going to unintentionally break a driving law. You're going to break a speed limit. You're not going to use your blinker. You're not going to come to a complete stop, whatever. Same thing with hunting and fishing. If you do it, you're eventually going to technically break a law. Now, I'm not talking about people who go out after dark with a spotlight with the intent of shooting a buck in the middle of the night. No, that's a whole different situation. It's like laying your shotgun across your tailgate. You can't do that. But did you do, I mean, what harm did it do? I know it's a safety issue. I get that. And I hear from people all the time, Avery, these fish and game laws are so complicated. I mean, I talk to game wardens. Well, listen, I think every game warden worth their salt when they're out there has the digest with them so they can go back and look at it. So if the people who enforce these laws, and listen, I'm pro law enforcement. I'm pro law enforcement. Let's get that clear. But if they have a hard time remembering the laws, think about us as hunters and anglers. People say, it's gotten so complicated, I have to take a lawyer with me when I go out in the field. Well, that's an overstatement, of course, said to illustrate a point, and it does. But wouldn't it be nice? I mean, it's been several years now, but they recodified all of our fish and game laws. Wouldn't it be nice to have them do it again? Wouldn't it be nice to have all of these things fit on like 2 pages? Here's what you're allowed to do. Here's what you're not allowed to do. And simplify it all and make it easy. I don't know, with everything else going on, I don't see that as a high priority. I don't see that happening soon. Thank you, Ben, for that question. And thank you, Security Credit Union, for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in our third hour, Mike Thorman of the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation wants to talk about hunting coyotes with dogs. I think he wants to talk about wolves, too. That and more, meaning Dixie Dave.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polarcraft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome. Welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. I was just at the top of the hour here, between the hours, I was checking my Facebook page, and I'm looking at a comment from an anti-hunter. I find it so interesting. Why is it that folks who don't subscribe to our way of life, why is it that they feel so obligated to try to... Pat, what's going on out there?
It's working outside.
You folks listening to the show might not be able to hear it, but it sounds like they're building a house outside the window. Why is it that folks who don't subscribe to our way of life, hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping, why is it that they feel so obligated to demean what it is that we do? Why do they feel so obligated to be so vocal about being so nasty and so mean-spirited that they want to come on a page like mine and attack what it is that we do. I don't go to their pages and attack them because I could care less what they do. I don't care what they do. And that's, I think, the way of most hunters and anglers and shooters and trappers. It's like, leave us alone. Let us do what it is we want to do, and we won't bother you. Yet these groups from the outside who don't agree with us feel that we are doing something wrong, and somehow it is their obligation to let the world know that we are evil people and take every opportunity they can to attack us. I don't get that mindset. We all don't have to agree with everybody. You know, the world isn't made up. The world doesn't consist of people who agree with each other on every topic. And wouldn't it be boring if it did? I just find it so interesting that they get so worked up about what we do. And all we are doing is enjoying our ability to interact with Mother Nature, to interact with fish and wildlife, to try to put some food on the table or in the freezer, to try to manage wildlife and fish populations, to try to continue this history and tradition of hunting and fishing, to try to continue our family traditions of what we've done for generations, and do something that is legal and is fun. How does that give these outside groups the right to constantly, viciously, vehemently attack us? I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyway, I got a little off topic there. That's just what I happened to see at the top of the hour. I can't tell you how many death threats I've had from people. Now, I don't take them seriously. I do take every available option to protect myself, but I don't take those threats seriously. But why is it? I would never go on somebody's page and say, oh, because you don't hunt, I'm going to kill you. What? You know, which is what they do to me. Anyway, let's move along. I grew up in a family of hunters, and we always had dogs. Primarily bird dogs. English setters for chasing pheasants. When I was real little, though, we had some beagles. And what do you do with beagles in Michigan? You chase rabbits. There is something about this relationship of having a dog in your household that you use for hunting. I mean, all dogs are great, right? Just the family pets who lay around the couch, they're fun. But if you take that relationship to the next level, and you take your family pet, your buddy, your friend, out in the fields, out in the marsh, out in the woods, and have them become a part of your hunting passion, it takes it to the next level. Mike Thorman is a guy who knows this very well. He's with the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation. You can find him on Facebook at the MHDF, Michigan Hunting Dog Federation. Mike, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Well, I'm a little depressed and no snow. I got 11 hounds and no snow to chase coyotes, but I'm doing well.
Why do you need snow, Mike?
Well, this is just a personal theory, but I use the same dogs for chasing bears, and I never let them run coyotes on bear ground. And even if I find a bear track in the snow, I never let them run bears on the snow because, and it's worked for me for 40 years. They never run a coyote in the summer. They just know that coyotes are in the snow and bears in the ground. Now there's a lot of people that'll dispute that, but I find it to be absolutely factual.
Well, it's worked for you.
It works for me and several of my friends. Yeah.
Could you take the dogs up into the UP and find some snow there?
Yeah, but I'm not going to go mess with the wolves. I quit going to the UP. I quit bear hunting in the UP. The wolves are, I don't want to see one of my dogs run down. And if you've ever seen pictures of what those wolves do to a dog, if it's in there a half a mile off the road, you can't get to it before it will be completely eaten.
I have seen
it's
pictures.
Really gross.
Yeah.
Nasty.
I've seen pictures, and I've talked to houndsmen who have lost dogs to wolves. And wolves. I don't blame you, Mike. I don't blame you at all.
I just avoid it.
Yeah. How did you get started down this path of being a houndsman?
My uncle, when I was little, my uncle would take me coon hunting, and I always liked hounds. And as soon as I got out of the house, Dad was bird dogs. That's all we were going to have was bird dogs. My uncle had the hounds. And as soon as I got out of college and place of my own, I started in with hounds. I really like it. I got, maybe this will incriminate me, but I used to be one hunting a body count kind of a guy. How many can I get, you know? And since hounds, and more every day, it doesn't matter if I ever get the gun out at all. It's raising the dogs in the next litter. And my dogs, I can trace them back 50 years. I've bred the same family for 50 years. Every dog I have goes back to one dog. And I don't know. It gets to be way more important about what the dogs are doing than what you're killing. How's that for a statement?
I think it's a great statement, and I think you've described the evolution that a lot of hunters go through as they get older.
Yep. I'm 75 years old. I've never killed a bear. Now, there's nothing wrong with killing bears. There's been bears killed that my dogs have treated, no problem, welcome it. But I've never just felt the need to do it. It was the fact that I raised that dog, and I had his father and his grandfather and his great-grandfather, and he was able to cold trail and jump the bear and put it up a tree. That's where the thrill comes nowadays for me.
This first dog that you take all of your generations of your hounds today back to that first dog, that must have been quite an animal.
Oh, he was a tremendous dog. There was quite a houndsman, a fellow named Tom Schutz, and he had this dog named Jack, and that was the most fantastic dog. We would hunt fox. There were no coyotes, and in Lapeer County, basically, Lapeer and St. Clair County. And Tom worked second shift at Chrysler's. And I don't care where we were. We could be 15 miles away from Tom's house. And if the dog wasn't readily available to catch, Tom would say, well, it's 1 o'clock. I got to go. And he would leave, and that dog would just go home every day. When Tom got back home at 11 o'clock at night, the dog would be there. He was an extremely intelligent dog, extremely cold-nosed. He was everything a dog could ever be. And I'm lucky to have had some that were approached his abilities over the years.
Jack is a great name for a hound.
Tom had 4 of them. He had the original Jack, and then the rest of the Jacks, because I carried the line, and he was a big coonhound man, a red bone man, won championships all over the country and everything. So he had 4 more Jacks, and they came from me to Tom, and we were great hunting buddies till he passed.
We're talking with Mike Thorman of the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation. I got a feeling I could talk to Mike for a long, long time in the stories he's going to tell. But we've got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. If you want to learn more about this group, the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation, you can find them on Facebook. And you know, Jack is a houndsman, but the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation is not just for hounds. It's not just for retrievers. It's not just for pointers. It's not just for setters. It's not just for Fausts. It's not for beagles. You know, it's the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation. And if you've ever hunted with dogs or over dogs, you know that is a very special experience, and it can be a very special relationship. To hear Mike talk about Jack, the dog from 50 years ago. I mean, I think about Lady and Tony, the English setters I hunted that taught me how to hunt pheasants. You know, I can remember that to this day, and that's been 50 years. Take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, more with Mike Thorman of the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Muskegon on WKBZ, that's 1090 AM. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC, 660 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Manistee on WTIQ 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard. And it's actually not too early to start thinking about that. I know, Avery, it's only mid-January, right? But if you've got a project you want to get done next spring, and so you can get it done in the springtime and enjoy it throughout the summer, this is the time to think about it. This is the time to get in touch with the folks at Reader and get that project in their system, in the pipeline. In the meantime, if you got some snow that needs removing, if Mother Nature decides to give you snow, the folks from Reader can take care of that as well. Check them out online at readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. We're talking right now with Mike Thorman of the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation. You can find those folks on Facebook at the MHDF. Mike is a houndsman. Talks about a dog, Jack, from 50 years ago. Mike, how did you then, or let me rephrase. Your dad was a bird dog guy, and you're a houndsman. Is there...
I was a bird dog guy until the pheasants disappeared.
Well, okay, that makes sense.
Both.
That makes sense,
Both.
Yeah, okay. Because what I was going to bring up is why is it that the perception among a lot of people is if you hunt upland birds behind a setter or a pointer, that is somehow held in high esteem, but if you chase coons or coyotes behind a hound, you're somehow thought of as maybe not being of the same social status. Why is that?
Oh, I've done a lot of thinking on that. And I think it's because people don't understand it and have never experienced it. And there's not a whole lot of hounds people like there was when you and I were growing up. Everybody had a bird dog of some kind or hunted pheasants, and they don't understand. I'll give you an example. I took 3 legislators out during bear training season, and we treat a bear. And at the end of the day, they said, boy, this wasn't anything like what we expected. And I said, really, what'd you expect? Well, we thought we were training bear dogs. We thought we were going to see you training bear dogs to rip bears to shreds. And instead, we saw families in every truck. We saw grandmas and mother-in-laws and girlfriends and babies. It wasn't anything like we imagined it to be. And I think that is a pretty wide-held position of many people that have never been involved, and they just don't understand it.
The fact that you took those legislators out says a lot to me. I was talking earlier in the show, Mike, about how we as outdoorsmen and women tend to not want to get involved. We just want to do our own thing, leave us alone, and not get involved in the system, the politics, the process. But we have to these days, don't we? I mean, things have changed so much since you were a kid and when I was a kid. If we're going to continue this way of life, we got to get involved now.
Oh, my goodness. I want to switch from dogs for a second to the threat here in Michigan that you were talking about. Why do they hate you and want to stop it? In Michigan, the Humane Society of the United States, we've got a target on our back here in Michigan because we are the most politically organized, politically connected, and DNR connected. I took the director out chasing bears, too, and director of the DNR, Gannon Lott. And I've never taken anybody who didn't want to do it, but that's beside the point. It's follow the money. The old thing, follow the money. The Humane Society of the United States doesn't rescue anything. They if you look them up on Charity Watch, they're a do not donate. But it's money. People from around the world have this perspective of hounding as being bloodthirsty and unsportsmanlike and unnecessary. It's just not that way. in reality. But they collect so many millions, tens of millions, for example, to defend the wolves, not having any wolf management in Michigan. I've been on the Wolf Roundtable since its inception in 2008, and I see it all the time. And this time I got to ask the question of the HSUS representative here in Michigan, well, you really love these wolves. And I said the Michigan bear hunters have donated $35,000 worth of things to the DNR. For example, they built bear traps every year, one or two, donate them so bears can be moved instead of euthanized. They've donated trail cams. They've donated GPS collars. In the last 3 years, it's totaled $35,000. And I went on down the list. I don't need, but several organizations have done so much, like Rough Grouse, 64,000 acres of habitat, But there's a lot of organizations that are doing that. So I asked her, I said, so you guys really love these wolves and these wild animals. Certainly you must have done something to donate some GPS collars or something, some habitat work or something. And quite frankly, the answer is zero. Nothing.
Yeah.
And hunters get the bad, they portray us as bad people. Now, it's not just hounds. Out in Washington, they've stopped all field trials. We have field trials for bird dogs and Labradors and retriever trials. Those are illegal. Around the country, all over the country, especially on the West Coast and the East Coast, hunting with dogs is coming under attack. Terrible. All hunting with dogs. And they can collect money from it. That's just simply, they get donations. People don't understand it, want to stop it. Mostly urban people. I know it grinds the people in the UP that the people in Detroit and Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo are yelling that we got to protect these wolves and these beautiful animals. Let them go up and live with them, where the wolf is in the backyard by the swing set, for crying out loud. Would they let their kid then go out the next day and play in that backyard by that swing set? I don't think so.
I was talking with Cody Norton of the DNR, about wolves in the second hour. I think Cody's a great guy. I have a lot of respect for Cody.
He's a great guy. Know him well.
But you were telling me about a situation in the UP with some of your friends at the Hiawatha Club. Tell me more about that.
Well, the people, there's hunters, and then there's real hunters. I mean, the people that are in the woods year-round, hunting, trapping, And one of those is a fellow named Dick Pershinsky that's a lifetime member of the Hiawatha Club. And I guess he's 80 years old now, or right close. And he said they've killed as many as, Dick was just telling me this yesterday, as many as $40 opening day at the Hiawatha Club. He said, in this year, the entire deer take, 36,000 acres, with deer feeding programs in the winter, food plots in the summer and fall, 36,000 acres, and they only killed 16 deer, 12 bucks and 4 does.
Wow.
And he said to me, Mike, the department is claiming, well, the bears and the coyotes and the bobcats are killing deer too. Well, that's true. That's absolutely true. Nobody denies that. There's only one thing changed on the Hiawatha Club. Now, in a lot of places, we've lost our wintering ground for deer, but not on the Hiawatha Club. And 36,000 acres is a pretty big chunk of ground. And when they can only manage to kill that many deer, what is changed? What has changed in the last 25, 30 years? There's only one thing that's changed. Wolves. But I got friends in the DNR that are in charge, and we call each other friends, but we sure disagree on what's happening up there with the deer.
And you bring up a good point. it's okay to disagree over things. I mean, as long as we all as long as we have the same bigger goal of protecting the resource, protecting the habitat, and encouraging people to get out and enjoy those resources, we can disagree about how to get there, right? You're a prime example of that. You, with the things you've done by reaching out to people who wouldn't normally buy into what you're doing, Mike.
Well, I'll tell you some examples of why that the Humane Society of the United States tried to do this last year, pieces of legislation. I won't go through all of them, but I'll go through one in particular. All hunters carry their dogs in cars, grouse hunters and pheasant hunters and beagle guys and hound guys, not just hound guys. The reason they pick on hounds so much is there's not as many of us. Low-hanging fruit kind of a deal.
Yep.
But anyway, they tried to pass a piece of legislation that a dog could never be left unattended in a car. And they got a senator to sponsor it. And now they were trying to sell it of the fact that somebody goes into the mall on a 90-degree day and leaves their dog in the car with the windows rolled up. You know, nobody wants that. Nobody loves dogs more than hunters love dogs. I mean, they're buddies. I certainly shed a tear whenever one of mine has to go. Anyway, and we went in and I sat down with the senator and MUCC. Amy and I were there, my brother, and we explained grouse hunters very commonly carry two sets of dogs. They'll run one for a couple hours or whatever and come back to the truck and swap them out for another one. Some pheasant peoples do that. It's common. So, or hunters that are traveling north, they stop for dinner and their dog's in the car. But hunters, they aren't locked in the back seat. Hunters have, we call them dog boxes that are very well ventilated, and they usually have water in there and so forth. But the law is the law. And I would certainly agree. I don't want a dog left in a car with the windows rolled up while somebody's off shopping. Yeah. But there's different ways of carrying a dog.
Mike, listen.
And they try to sneak that through. They're not.
I hear you. I hear exactly what you're saying. I'm out of time. I got to let you go, but your point is very well made and very well taken. Mike Thorman of the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation. You can find him on Facebook, the MHDF. It's an interesting topic. I'll follow up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Thanks, Mike. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. So glad to have you along with us. My name is Mike Avery. I enjoyed that conversation with Mike Thorman. What an interesting guy. What a cool guy. I love talking with people who have passion. Passion for what they do. Because with passion usually comes knowledge, expertise, and if they're willing to share that passion, that knowledge, that expertise, what more could you ask for in a radio guest? I want to follow up on a couple of things that were brought up earlier in the show. And one of those, I've got a little egg on my face, and I need to come clean here. I have been a real vocal opponent of the Michigan DNR regarding the consent decree. Now, we talked about this back in the first hour with Jim Johnson, who is a retired DNR Fisheries biologist. And it's pretty clear that Michigan sport fishermen and women, sport anglers, are getting the short end of the deal on this, and that the tribal commercial fishermen are coming out ahead. Just to be clear, nobody that I have heard talk, and myself included, is saying that the tribal anglers don't have a right to fish. Of course they have a right to fish. But I question why the best interest of 90 commercial fishermen is being put ahead of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of sport anglers. And I've been saying, why has the DNR not stepped up and defended sport anglers' best interest. And Jim Johnson made me aware of something I didn't even know. He said, Mike, the DNR really hasn't even hardly been a part of these conversations. It's been the tribes, the Attorney General's office, and everybody else has kind of been on the outside. So if I want to better direct my disappointment, I need to move it away from the DNR and toward the Attorney General's office. And so, okay, I accept that. I accept that. I was looking at that incorrectly, and my apologies to the Michigan DNR on that issue. Doesn't change the fact that I'm still pretty disappointed on what's happening, though. The other topic I want to follow up on was brought up in the second hour by Cody Norton of the DNR. He is a wildlife biologist. And we were talking about this concept of coy wolves. And this is something I brought up a few weeks ago, saying don't buy into it. Don't buy into the concept that wolves and coyotes are interbreeding and creating the species called coy wolf, because it ain't happening. There is no biological term for this. And if it does happen on a very, very remote basis, like possibly it did up Sheboygan, Alpena area about 10 years ago, that's the only case they've found of it. It's not happening on a widespread basis like the folks from PBS and Nature want you to believe. When you see a coyote, a big coyote, roaming around central Michigan, that is not a coy wolf. It's a big coyote. The wolves from the UP did not make their way down to Clare County, or whatever, pick your county, and breed with the local coyotes to create something called a coy wolf. It ain't happening. Now, the reason that is so concerning to me is that, speaking of our friends, the antis, as Mike Thorman was just a minute ago, talking about their attacks on houndsmen and everything else, if we, as a society, buy into this concept and jump on this concept and embrace this concept of wolves and coyotes interbreeding to create a coy wolf, that paints a very gloomy and dark picture for all the predator hunters out there. Because if the antis start jumping on this bandwagon, and I got to be honest with you, I'm surprised they haven't yet, so I'm going to quit talking about it after this and shut up, and hopefully it'll go away, which it won't. Once the antis jump on the coy wolf concept and say we can't hunt wolves, so therefore if there is wolf DNA in coyotes, we shouldn't be hunting coyotes either. That's not that far down the road. That is not that crazy. That's not crazy talk. That's just looking down the road. So I appreciate Cody Norton bringing that up. What else? My name is Mike Avery. The show is Outdoor Magazine. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com. The email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. If you want to reach out to me for whatever reason, if you think I'm way off base on this coy wolf issue, well, okay. I mean, I'm willing to defend myself on it. I can do that. Send me an email, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. We got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we're going to wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I had a meeting with Dixie Dave just the other night. In fact, getting ready for our big Trinity Monitor wild game dinner and auction that's coming up Saturday, March 4th at the Great Hall in Midland. Tickets will go on sale January 30th. But you, as an Outdoor Magazine listener, may get an early shot at those tickets. And you're going to want to do that because last year we sold out in, 3, 4, 5 days. We are expanding the event, expanding the venue this year, so love to see you there. Details coming up. We'll take a break. Dixie Dave wraps it all up after that break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. You can hear us in Tawas twice each weekend on WIOS 1480 AM and 106.9 FM. And you can hear us in Saginaw also twice each weekend on WSGW AM 790 AM and 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now. I'm here with Pat Johnston, who graciously allows me to borrow one corner of his studio for these 3 hours every week. Pat, I do certainly appreciate it. Pat does a great job. I wouldn't be able to do this show without his help. Also wouldn't be able to do the show, well, I could, but it wouldn't be the same if I didn't have wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar on with me each week at the end of the show to send us off with a tremendous bang. And he's with us once again. David, welcome back. How are you?
Very good. It was nice seeing everybody from Trinity last night.
Yeah, I was talking about that. I was saying that, that event's coming up Saturday, March 4th at the Great Hall in Midland. You are, of course, our wild game chef again, and tickets are scheduled to go on sale Monday, January 30th. Details coming up as we get closer.
Okay.
What do you got for us this week, Dave?
Well, I got a baked walleye, kind of a southern style Louisiana, and this would be for 4 people. And you need about 8 to 10 ounces of boneless, skinless filet per person. And this is going to be a baked dish. So at first we're going to saute up a bunch of vegetables and some bacon. And then we're going to bake this after we get this all set up and all your preparation is done. So you need about 3/4 pound of bacon, diced pretty small. 1 large onion, 1 large green pepper, 1 large red pepper. Same thing, dice it kind of small. So it doesn't look like big pieces all over this fish when we do this. You need I like a lot of garlic in this dish, so I'm going to spring for about 6 to 7 large cloves diced up real fine. You need about a heaping teaspoon of either Italian spice, or you can mix basil, oregano, and thyme. It'll give you just about the same flavor. You need a 1/2 pound of fresh butter, 1/4 pound of Parmesan cheese, and mozzarella would be an option for this. I particularly like it, so we're going to leave it in. Fresh ground pepper all over. So what you're going to do, and a couple of eggs and flour and olive oil to saute with. So you're going to dip, after you get the fish ready, you're going to dip it in the flour, then in the egg, and then in a nice hot frying pan, you're going to brown it on both sides. And put this on the side for just a little while. In the same pan, you can get all the ingredients except for the Parmesan cheese and the mozzarella, if you're going to use mozzarella. Bring it up to a boil, reduce the heat, and simmer uncovered about 10 minutes. You want to break all of that flavor loose, because it's in the oven not for that long. So you want to pretty much 3/4 way cook this through. Taste your mixture. See if it's your flavor now. You need maybe a little bit more spice, maybe a little bit of pepper. Just make sure it's all right. So set this aside. So you want to take and put some of this mixture on a baking sheet. Say if for 4 people, you're going to make 4 little piles of this, kind of spread it out so the fish lays on top of it, and you got enough on the bottom to facilitate the fish laying on top. So then what you want to do is lay more of this spice mixture and vegetable mixture on top. Put your Parmesan cheese, and you're going to bake this about 10 minutes because the fish is going to be almost fully cooked, and your sauce that you're going to be putting on this is just about fully cooked also. So you want a 350-degree oven, 10 minutes, and just until the cheese is nice and hot and bubbly and kind of browning up a little bit. Or you can broil it real quick, too. And this, you can make it as spicy or as mild as you prefer for your family or your dining people. We've done this before in the past. We did a dish real similar to this probably 25 years ago for the TV show. It has come out just great. We've done it at the restaurant, too, a lot.
And I like having a recipe like this, too, where you can modify it to suit your family or your friends. You make it real spicy or real mild. Is that pretty much the case with all of your recipes, Dave, or are there some who are designed to be, yes, this is designed to be hot, don't tone it down, it won't be as good?
That's true. We've done a lot of food like that, Michael, in the past, for recipes either on the TV show or over the radio. So, some of that bronzing stuff that we've done or blackening. Most of the venison dishes, I would say, have a little spice to it, not a whole lot,
Well, have you been able to enjoy retirement yet, or are you still busy wrapping things up that it doesn't even feel like
humping
it?
Like crazy.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. And then we're going to put you to work at a big Trinity dinner. You're not going to feel like you're retired until April, Dave.
I know it.
Is that good, though? Is that good?
That's good.
Okay.
I'm happy. At least I'm busy and I'm jamming,
There you go. All right, David, we'll talk again soon. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Mike.
Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you, because if you weren't listening, there'd be no reason to do this show, and I wouldn't know what to do with myself. Check out the website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't hesitate to reach out to me on email, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't forget Wednesday Night Live on my social media outlets. Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. I do a Behind the Mic segment live online Wednesday mornings at 8:45. And don't forget the podcasts as well. So I got lots of things going on. I encourage you to check them out. I appreciate it when you do. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.